I think with the release of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, it basically confirms that, you can never please every Star Wars fan, and also, no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. So Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is once again directed by J.J. Abrams, returning from The Force Awakens, and this film focuses on the surviving Resistance who are coming together to fight the First Order and Kylo Ren for the final time in the concluding chapter of the Skywalker saga. So I've got to preface this review by saying that I am a huge Star Wars fan. Star Wars is my favourite movie franchise of all time. I grew up with Star Wars, and it's something that is incredibly close to my heart. So going into The Rise of Skywalker, I had very high expectations, and also I was very excited just to see how they were going to finally conclude this 9-episode long chapter. As you can see, I've changed the set a little bit, got some Star Wars pops up and about. If you want to see more on these pops, stay tuned. I've got a huge haul video coming up, so make sure you stay tuned to the channel for that. That will feature all these pops and many more. But without the way, I was very excited going into The Rise of Skywalker, especially because I actually rewatched the entire saga, including the spin-offs, just before watching The Rise of Skywalker, and it got me very much in the mood for Star Wars. It got me very excited, and given the fact that I pretty much like every Star Wars movie for, whatever reason that may be, I had a feeling that I was going to come out of this movie pretty positive, and well, I've got to be honest, I really love this movie. I would like to start off by talking about the story of this film, and for me, The Rise of Skywalker has a very familiar but very nice feeling story. It's a film that's very much about a MacGuffin to take you to this place where we'll get our big final battle that you always see in the Star Wars films. And for me, that particular story, while it wasn't particularly original or fresh or anything like that, it was very much a formulaic Star Wars story. For me, it felt like, a good old pair of jeans. You could slip back into them, no issue, and it was all just nice feeling and it was fine. And for me, I don't really care for the story of this movie because I thought that the story was fine. I thought it was exactly what it was going to be. It was exactly what a Star Wars story should be. It's exactly what a Star Wars story is going to be. I think people honestly expect a lot more from Star Wars than they actually should. I think Star Wars as a franchise, they're kids' movies. That's what they are. They are kids' movies, and I know some people may not want to hear that, but George Lucas has said it himself. The creator of Star Wars himself has said that he created them as kids' movies. And, people who love Star Wars now, including myself, we watched them as kids. We grew up with them as kids. So the stories of Star Wars are always very simple. They've always been very simplistic. And this movie is no different. And I think that people who are expecting more from that, I think we're kind of fooling themselves and kind of expecting Star Wars to be something that it's not. And I think that if you go into this movie knowing what Star Wars is and knowing how the other movies have played out, I think you'll like this story just because it's going to feel familiar, as I did. And also, from a storytelling perspective, what I really appreciate about this film is that unlike The Last Jedi, which, also just to say quickly, I actually really like The Last Jedi, but one of the things I really didn't like about The Last Jedi was the different storylines going on in the movie, because while the stuff with Rey and Luke on the island I really liked, and the stuff with Poe and Leia and Admiral Holdo on the ship was really cool, the Canto Bight stuff with Finn and Rose was really boring and really quite bad to me personally. I really don't like that portion of the movie. What I liked about Rise of Skywalker is that all the characters are together in this one. There's very little kind of plot switching. There's very little minimal storylines going on. I like the fact that the plot line is basically simple. It's one. You have a couple of the plot threads here and there, yes, but mostly, for the most part, it's focused on this one central storyline with all of our main characters coming together for the first time, and I really appreciated that. It just made it feel a lot more tight for me personally, rather than bouncing about these other storylines, which could potentially get boring like they did in The Last Jedi. And of course, the reason why we all love Star Wars is because of the fantastic characters we have, and I'll go through those quickly, of course, no spoilers. For me, I want to talk about Kylo Ren first. Kylo Ren, for me, has been the most interesting part of this entire trilogy. I think Kylo as a character is so interesting. Making him the son of Han and Leia was a great choice, and seeing how he's this conflicted character who's always riding the line between the light side and the dark side, I found really great, and the work they did with him in The Last Jedi I found fantastic, so I couldn't wait to see what they were going to do with him in this, and I have to say, he's great. I love the direction they go with Kylo in this movie. It's fantastic. It's exactly what I wanted for Kylo in this movie, and I think that he really did a great job of portraying this character. And Adam Driver, who I love Adam Driver, like I absolutely adore Adam Driver, and I've always loved him as Kylo Ren, and I think that he does an absolutely phenomenal job. He's easily probably the best part of this movie for me alongside Rey. I think that they just do a fantastic job, and I think that he, as this character, really nails it home, and I think that he's just a fantastic part of this movie, and I'm so happy where they went with him. And then the other characters in this movie, we have Rey, of course, Daisy Ridley. Rey, great. I mean, Rey has been consistently great this entire trilogy as well. I loved her in Force Awakens, I really liked her in Last Jedi, and I loved her in Rise of Skywalker. I think that her journey, where she goes, and the things that she goes through in this movie is really great for her character, and I think that Daisy Ridley really pulls it off as well. I also want to talk about John Boyega as Finn. Finn as a character is someone I think has received the short end of the stick in this entire trilogy, because Finn started out as a really interesting character to me, someone who was a stormtrooper who defected from the Empire or from the First Order and then kind of became a good guy. You know, he kind of maybe felt like he was a Jedi and then he wasn't. I just thought he was a really interesting character in Episode 7, and then in Episode 8 they barely did anything with him. And while I would say in this movie he doesn't get that much to do, I do like the direction they went with him and where he kind of ends up in the movie, and I think that his overall kind of journey does end in a nice place. Although there is a plot thread with him that they should have continued a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen that fleshed out a little bit more. Other than that, I think that Finn actually ends up in a really good place in this movie, and although I think he could have had more to do with this entire trilogy, I think that I do overall enjoy where Finn went as a character. And of course we do have to talk about Princess Leia, of course played by the late Carrie Fisher. This film had the very unfortunate task of having to try and continue the movie and try and continue and wrap up Leia's story with the passing of Carrie Fisher. And I don't envy their task at all. It was incredibly difficult. And yes, it is a bit sloppy, it is a bit messy. I'm not going to hold it against the movie because it's just such a difficult thing to do. I think they did the absolute best they could with the material they had. Of course, this is sort of reused footage of deleted footage from The Force Awakens, and I probably assumes there's some Last Jedi stuff in there as well that they repurposed for this movie. So, you know, yeah, it's not the best, but again, it's the best they could do with what they had of the situation. I'm not going to hold it against the movie. I'm not going to take any points off of the movie because of it. You know, they had to do an impossible task here, and in my opinion, they pulled it off and they wrapped up Leia's story in a way that felt satisfying to me. Yeah, it wasn't as the best it could have been. Obviously, if Carrie Fisher was still alive, I'm sure they would have done something else. But given the fact of what they had, I think they did a great job. And I really like the new characters in this. I think General Pride, played by Richard E. Grant, was a really fun addition. I think, you know, he just chews scenery in this movie. He's great. And also, I think Zori Bliss, played by Kerry Russell, was a really fun addition. I actually would like to see more of her. Although I don't think she gets that much to do in the movie, I think her design as a character is really cool, and what they could do with her, given her background and her kind of occupation in the world, I think delivers some really awesome opportunities for a really cool story with her. So maybe in a Disney Plus series, I could even maybe see her showing up in The Mandalorian if they were going to do that, although obviously The Mandalorian takes place quite a bit before. But you know what I mean. I think a really cool kind of Disney Plus series for Zori Bliss is something that could be in the run. It's something that could come down the line in the future, and something I would definitely like to see. And with this movie being the final film in the saga, there is a lot of fan service. I think to a lot of the people watching this movie, it might be to the detriment of the story. And while there are some elements of that, like one thing I will talk about here is the return of Emperor Palpatine. Of course, if you didn't know, Emperor Palpatine is in this movie. That was completely in the trailers and everything. That's not a spoiler, of course. For me, the return of Palpatine felt a bit forced. I don't really love the idea of Palpatine being in this movie. Although I love the character of Palpatine, I love the Emperor, I love Ian McDiarmid, it's a weird choice to have him here because to me personally, it feels obvious that J.J. Abrams set up the idea of Snoke being the big overarching villain of this trilogy, and then Rian Johnson kind of got rid of Snoke in Episode 8, so they had to try and had to bring back another big threat because they knew they needed a big threat to fight. So they were like, okay, we need to bring back Palpatine, so let's do that. And while we can do that, it'll completely, you know, forgive what we did with Snoke, and then also the fans will come back because fans love Palpatine. So to me, it kind of felt like a bit of damage control to kind of come in and bring in Palpatine to get the fans back on board and to rewrite what Johnson did. And I think for me personally, while I like Palpatine as a character and I like what he does in this movie, I like his role within the movie, I just felt it was a bit forced, and especially with some of the developments with his character, I was a bit like, it's cool, I like it, but I just don't know if he was necessarily the right choice for this movie. So again, I like it, it's fine, it's just a bit too forced, and again, I can kind of see the cogs turning over at Disney as to why they made that choice. So as far as wrapping up everything in this franchise goes, I think that this movie does a really good job of it all. I think that I came away from this film feeling satisfied. I came away from this film feeling like, yes, that was a great conclusion to the Star Wars saga. For me personally, I think that this film is very, very divisive. I think some people are really going to walk away from this movie not liking it. Well, I don't even need to predict it. I know, I've seen it online. People are walking away from this movie going, what was that? Worst movie in the saga. And some others are walking away going, you know what, that was great and it was a lot of fun and I had a great time with it. And I'm definitely on the latter side of the camp. I think that this film it wraps up everything really nicely for me. I think as a Star Wars fan, I really like where this movie went. I really like how it kind of took this direction and went for it and just kind of wrapped up everything in its own way. And I think that it's a really smart move to kind of deliver the way it did. Obviously, it's really hard to talk about this movie without spoilers. I really have to beat around the bush, but I think that this film and The Rise of Skywalker, what it does for the saga and what it does for, you know, the overall trilogy that started with The Force Awakens, I think it serves as a really nice wrap-up to that original trilogy, but also to the saga as a whole. And I think that this film, it's just a fun time as well. I think it has a lot of shocks and surprises, a lot of thrills, and I think if that's what you're looking for in a Star Wars movie, you're going to be satisfied with The Rise of Skywalker. If you are someone who is perhaps going into it with a bit more in mind, perhaps someone who really, really liked The Last Jedi and is looking for something a bit more in line with that, I think you may be disappointed. And as a Star Wars fan, again, you could go either way with it. For me as a fan, I really liked it, but others may be completely different. And for me personally, I loved The Rise of Skywalker. I had a great time, and I cannot wait to see it again. Obviously, I will be doing a Star Wars ranking video very soon, so you'll see how it falls in my overall ranking of the franchise. But for me personally, The Rise of Skywalker, it was a blast. I loved it. And for me, it was a great conclusion to the Star Wars saga. So have you guys seen Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker? If you have, make sure you let me know all your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, guys, if you want to see more movie reviews and movie-related videos just like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload from me. And hope to see you guys again next time.